The Armada arrives. The war chamber of the Corvani Imperial dreadnought pulsed with pale blue light. Fleet Admiral Zethros stood before the massive holographic display, his 6 fingers interlaced behind his back. Around him, 300 officers from across the Corvani Empire waited in disciplined silence. They had gathered for this moment, planned for it through 5 orbital cycles, and now the time had finally come. The display showed a small yellow star in an unremarkable region of space. Orbiting that star was a blue and green world, the 3rd planet from its sun. The humans called it Earth. To the Corvani it was simply Conquest Target 892, another world to add to their vast empire. Another species to bring under their control, another victory to record in the endless chronicles of Corvani expansion. Zethros had served the Empire for 40 cycles. He had overseen 31 successful conquests across 27 star systems. His record was flawless. Not once had a world resisted beyond the first orbital period. Not once had the Empire lost more than a handful of vessels. He was efficient, methodical, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. The High Command trusted him completely. This mission was meant to be a celebration of his career, a final glorious conquest before his retirement to the inner worlds. The intelligence officer stepped forward. Her name was Kalara, and she had spent 3 cycles analyzing every piece of data about Earth. She activated her own display, and images of humans appeared throughout the chamber. They were bipedal like many species across the galaxy. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. Carbon-based life forms that breathed oxygen. Physically unremarkable. Their bones were fragile compared to Corvani skeletal structure. Their muscles were weaker. Their lifespans barely reached 100 of their planetary cycles. Nothing about them suggested they would pose any challenge whatsoever. Kalara presented her findings with clinical precision. Earth was in its primitive space age. The humans had managed to reach their own moon decades ago, but had made little progress beyond that. They possessed nuclear technology, chemical rockets, and basic satellite systems. Their weapons were crude by galactic standards. Missiles that traveled slower than thought, aircraft that could barely break the sound barrier, naval vessels that floated on water instead of soaring through space. They had no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light capability. By any measure, they were centuries behind the Corvani, yet Earth itself was valuable. The planet contained rare elements essential for Corvani technology, minerals that powered their ships and cities, elements worth more than 1,000 primitive civilizations. The biosphere was compatible with Corvani physiology, meaning colonization would require minimal terraforming. It was perfect. Too perfect to ignore, too valuable to leave unclaimed. The High Command had made their decision months ago. Earth would be annexed. Its resources would be harvested. Its population would be relocated to labor worlds and distant systems. This was standard procedure. The Corvani had done this 63 times before across 92 star systems. It was a process, a machine, an inevitability that could not be stopped. But this conquest would be different. The High Command wanted to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. They wanted every developing civilization to understand the futility of resistance. They wanted overwhelming force. They wanted fear. They wanted submission on a scale never before witnessed. So they assembled the largest invasion fleet in Corvani history, 9,700 warships. Each vessel was a masterpiece of Corvani engineering. Battle cruisers the size of small moons capable of cracking planets with sustained bombardment. Destroyers designed to sweep space clean of debris and enemy craft. Troop carriers holding 4 complete armies. Millions of soldiers ready to occupy every continent. Support vessels carrying supplies for a decade-long occupation, though nobody expected the campaign to last more than a few weeks. It was excessive. It was wasteful. It was completely unnecessary. Earth could have been conquered with a fraction of this force. But that was not the point. The point was the message. When other civilizations looked through their telescopes and saw 9,700 ships descending on one primitive world, they would understand. They would remember. They would never dare to resist. Zethros reviewed the fleet composition one final time. Every detail had been calculated. Every variable accounted for. Every possible complication had been planned for and solved. The tactical officer reported full readiness. All ships were at maximum power. All weapons were charged and calibrated. All shields were online and tested. All crews were at battle stations. Medical facilities were prepared for casualties, though they expected very few. The Armada waited only for his command. 9,700 ships, 3 million crew members, all waiting for one word from him. Zethros gave the order. The fleet jumped to hyperspace. The journey would take 7 months. 7 months of travel through the dark spaces between stars. 7 months for the crews to train and prepare. 7 months for the humans to remain ignorant of their approaching doom. 7 months of absolute certainty that when they arrived, victory would be swift and complete. 4 months into the journey, a small observatory on Earth detected something unusual. Dr. Sarah Chen had been studying gravitational waves for 15 years. She knew the patterns of natural cosmic events. Black hole mergers, neutron star collisions, supernovae. She had seen them all. But these readings were different. They showed organized patterns, coordinated movement, thousands of gravitational distortions moving in formation through deep space, moving with purpose, moving toward Earth. She spent 3 weeks checking her calculations, running every test, verifying every reading. She thought she had made a mistake. She hoped she had made a mistake. Then she reported it to her government. The report traveled up through channels, from local authorities to national governments, from governments to international agencies. Scientists held emergency conferences. They debated meanings, published papers, argued about interpretations. Most thought it was nothing, a cosmic phenomenon they did not yet understand, a measurement error, a glitch in the equipment. But a few suspected the truth, and those few began to prepare. As months passed, more observatories confirmed the readings. The anomalies were getting closer. They were following a direct course toward Earth. This was not natural. This was not random. This was something intelligent, something powerful, something coming for them. The United Nations called an emergency session. For the first time in history, every nation sent representatives. Old enemies sat at the same table. Ancient conflicts suddenly seemed small and distant. Humanity looked at itself and realized how fragile it was, how unprepared, how vulnerable. They understood what the data meant. Earth was not alone in the universe, and whoever was out there was coming fast, coming with purpose, coming in numbers that made their best weapons seem like toys. The world prepared in the only way it knew how. Military forces mobilized globally. Troops moved to strategic positions. Weapons were brought out of storage. Nuclear arsenals were readied. Scientists worked around the clock on theoretical defenses. Engineers tried to build weapons that might work against unknown technology. Governments stockpiled supplies. Cities prepared evacuation plans. But everyone knew the truth. If this was an invasion, Earth had no real defense, no real hope, no real chance of victory. Then the message came. It arrived on every frequency. Every satellite received it. Every communication device on the planet picked up the signal simultaneously. Phones, radios, televisions, computers. Everything with a receiver suddenly displayed the same message. The message was translated into every human language simultaneously. English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, Hindi, Russian. Every language spoken by more than 10 million people. The technology behind it was impossible by human standards. It was like magic. The message was simple, direct, devastating in its clarity. The Corvani Empire had arrived. Earth and all its resources now belonged to them. Resistance would be met with total annihilation. Surrender would be met with mercy. The humans would be relocated to work colonies where they would serve the Empire. They had 72 hours to decide. 3 days to choose between submission and extinction. Then the transmission included images. The Corvani fleet appeared on every screen across the world. 9,700 warships, each one the size of a city. All of them aimed at Earth. All of them carrying enough firepower to burn the planet to ash. The images were clear and detailed, designed to inspire terror, designed to break spirits, designed to make surrender seem like the only rational choice. Panic spread across the globe like wildfire. Some people rioted, some prayed, some simply went home to be with their families, to hold their children, to wait for the end. Governments scrambled for responses. Military commanders knew they were outmatched. Scientists admitted they had no solution, no secret weapon, no miracle technology in development. But in that moment of terror, something unexpected happened. Something the Corvani could never have predicted. Humanity did not break. It did not surrender. Instead, it became angry. The response from Earth came after 72 hours. 3 words transmitted on every frequency. 3 words that would change everything. Come and try. The Corvani fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 9,700 warships materialized in perfect formation. Their arrival sent gravitational ripples across space that every instrument on Earth detected immediately. Alarms sounded in every observatory, every space agency, every military installation. The enemy had arrived. Zethro stood on the command deck and watched Earth appear on his displays. From this distance it looked peaceful, beautiful even. A jewel floating in the darkness. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. He had seen many worlds fall. This one would be no different. The 72-hour deadline had passed. The humans had sent their response. Those 3 words. Come and try. Zethros expected terror. He expected desperate pleas for mercy. Offers of conditional surrender. Requests for negotiation. He got defiance instead. It was foolish. It was meaningless. It would change nothing. The outcome was already decided. He ordered a demonstration. Something to remind the humans of their place, to show them the futility of resistance. One of the destroyers targeted a moon in the human solar system. A small rocky satellite orbiting the planet they called Mars. A dead rock with no value. The perfect example, the destroyer fired once. A single concentrated energy beam. The energy crossed millions of kilometers in seconds. The moon called Phobos simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next moment, nothing. Not debris. Not fragments. Just empty space where a celestial body had been. The message was clear. This is what resistance earns. This is the power we command. Surrender or die. On Earth, billions of people watched Phobos disappear. They saw the alien weapon at work. They saw a moon erased from existence. They understood the power arrayed against them. Some lost hope, fell to their knees, wept for the future that would never come. But most felt something else. Something the Corvani did not expect. Not fear, not despair. Rage, a burning need to make these invaders pay. To hurt them, to make them regret coming to Earth. To show them that humanity would not go quietly into the night. The world mobilized completely. Every nation contributed everything. Old weapons were brought from storage. Missiles from decades past. Nuclear warheads that had been scheduled for decommissioning. Chemical weapons banned by treaties. Biological agents locked in secure laboratories. New weapons were hastily constructed. Factories retooled overnight. Civilian production stopped entirely. Everything focused on war. Military forces assembled at strategic points. Armies gathered. Navies positioned. Air forces prepared. But this time they were not preparing to fight each other. For the first time in human history, every military force on Earth had the same enemy, the same goal, the same desperate hope. Scientists worked on desperate plans, trying to find weaknesses in alien technology, trying to understand physics they had only theorized about, trying to build weapons that might actually hurt ships that could erase moons. Everyone knew the odds. Everyone knew the truth. Everyone understood that this was likely the end of human civilization. Everyone fought anyway. The Corvani fleet began its approach. They moved slowly, deliberately. There was no rush, no urgency. The humans had nowhere to run, no reinforcements to call, no allies to help them. This was inevitable. This was certain. This was already over before it began. The first contact came near the orbit of Mars. Corvani scout ships moved ahead of the main fleet. Probing, testing, mapping. They expected empty space, cold vacuum, nothing but rocks and radiation. They found mines, hundreds of nuclear warheads floating in carefully planned patterns, hidden among asteroids, disguised as debris, waiting in silence. The humans had turned their most powerful weapons into space traps, had weaponized their solar system, had prepared for war in the darkness. 3 scout ships died in the first wave of nuclear detonations. The atomic fires were beautiful, deadly, unexpected. The Corvani were surprised but not concerned. Primitive tactics, expected from a primitive species. Nothing that changed the outcome. The fleet adjusted course and continued. More carefully now. More alert, but still confident. Then they reached Earth's orbital space. The humans had weaponized everything. Old satellites became guided missiles. Space stations became firing platforms. Communication arrays became weapons. Even commercial equipment was retrofitted with explosives. Tourist modules, weather satellites, GPS networks. Every piece of human technology in orbit was now a weapon. The battle began. Human fighters launched from Earth. Small craft built for atmospheric combat but modified for space. Welded together from spare parts. Barely functional. They were slow by Corvani standards, fragile, poorly armed, using chemical rockets instead of proper drives. But there were thousands of them. Wave after wave. Coming without end, and they did not hesitate. Did not slow. Did not retreat. The pilots flew with recklessness that shocked the Corvani. They rammed ships when their weapons failed. Crashed into destroyers at full speed. Detonated their own craft to damage enemy vessels. Turned themselves into missiles. Into bombs. Into weapons of pure desperation. Suicide tactics. Kamikaze runs. Death as a weapon. Zethros watched the tactical display with growing confusion. The humans were losing badly. Every calculation showed their inevitable defeat. The numbers were clear. The outcome certain, but they kept fighting. They kept attacking. They refused to break, refused to surrender, refused to stop even when it was hopeless, even when death was certain. They came anyway. The Corvani destroyed hundreds of human craft, thousands. The space around Earth filled with debris, with wreckage, with bodies, but they lost ships too. Not many, just 53. A tiny fraction of the fleet, but that was 53 more than Zethros expected. 53 more than any previous conquest. 53 that should not have fallen. For the first time in his career, he felt something unfamiliar. Something wrong, doubt. The price of conquest. The fleet pushed forward toward Earth's atmosphere. They had lost more ships than anticipated, but the orbital battle was essentially won. The human resistance in space had been fierce but ultimately futile. Now came the next phase. Ground invasion. This was where Corvani superiority would truly shine. Their soldiers were trained for planetary conquest. Their armor was impenetrable by primitive weapons. Their tactics had been perfected across dozens of worlds. Zethros ordered 3 battle groups to enter Earth's atmosphere. The Eastern group would target the Asian continent. The Western group would focus on the Americas. The Central group would secure Europe and Africa. Each group contained over 800 ships. Each carried enough soldiers to occupy entire continents. It should have been simple. Textbook military doctrine. And establish control, pacify resistance. Nothing went as planned. The 3 battle groups entered Earth's atmosphere with weapons blazing. Energy beams carved paths through clouds. Plasma bolts turned air into fire. Missiles streaked downward, trailing smoke and destruction. This was standard procedure. Shock and awe, terror from above. Break the enemy spirit before soldiers even touched ground. But Earth's spirit did not break. Anti-aircraft weapons opened fire from thousands of hidden positions. Missiles launched from underground silos. Surface-to-orbit railguns that should not have existed fired rounds at hypersonic speeds. Lasers cut through clouds. Particle beams reached for the sky. The humans had prepared every city, every strategic position, every mountain range, bunkers, shelters, armories, weapon emplacements hidden in buildings, in forests, under highways. The weapons were primitive by Corvani standards. Chemical rockets, kinetic projectiles, nuclear warheads, but there were so many, thousands, tens of thousands, wave after wave without end. The Eastern Battle Group lost 42 ships in the first hour. Not destroyed completely, but damaged badly enough to retreat to orbit. Shields failing, engines burning, crews wounded. The Western Group lost 37. The Central Group lost 51. Zethros watched the numbers climb and felt his certainty crumble. Felt his confidence waver. Felt doubt creep deeper into his mind like poison spreading through veins. The landing zones had been chosen carefully. Open areas far from major cities. Places where Corvani air superiority would dominate. Where their technology would matter most. Where humans would have no cover. No advantages, but the humans had anticipated this. Predicted it. Prepared for it. They turned the landing zones into killing fields. Explosives buried under sand. Troops hidden in underground bunkers. Ambushes planned from every direction. Nothing was as it seemed. Every safe place was a trap. Every open field was a weapon. The first Corvani soldiers to touch Earth died within minutes. They wore advanced armor. Energy shields. powered exoskeletons. They carried plasma rifles, particle cannons, had training from 100 successful campaigns. But they found themselves in a nightmare. The humans used their own planet against them. They knew every hill, every valley, every street, every sewer, every tunnel, every building. And they fought with a savagery that shocked the invaders, a brutality that seemed impossible from such a physically weak species. In Brazil, the Corvani established their primary landing zone. It should have been a textbook operation. Secure the perimeter, build a forward base, project power across the continent. Establish dominance. Nothing went according to the textbook. The humans attacked in waves. First came military units, conventional warfare, tanks, artillery, infantry with assault rifles, coordinated strikes. Then came the guerrilla fighters, irregulars, militia groups, resistance cells, hit-and-run attacks, ambushes, sabotage. Then came the civilians. This was what shocked the Corvani most. On their conquered worlds, civilians surrendered quickly. They were not fighters. They were workers, farmers, teachers, merchants. They wanted to survive, wanted to protect their families. They made rational choices. Earth's civilians made different choices. Everyone was a soldier. Everyone was armed. Everyone was willing to die. The Corvani found themselves fighting children with rifles, elderly people with explosives strapped to their bodies. Entire families turned into resistance cells. Mothers teaching daughters to build bombs. Fathers training sons to shoot. No civilians. No non-combatants. Just enemies everywhere. Commander Thrakis led the ground forces in South America. He was a veteran of 23 campaigns. He had never lost a battle, had never failed to secure an objective. But Earth was different. His soldiers were dying, not in combat, not in honorable battle. They were dying from traps, from ambushes, from attacks they never saw coming. A medical convoy would be destroyed by explosives planted in the road. A supply depot would be sabotaged from inside by captured Corvani equipment, reprogrammed by human engineers. A patrol would disappear in a forest and never return. Bodies would be found days later stripped of weapons and armor. The Corvani soldiers were bred for ship combat, trained in boarding actions, in taking space stations, in fighting in controlled environments, artificial gravity, recycled air, predictable conditions. Earth's gravity was stronger than standard. It pulled them down, exhausted them. The atmosphere was thicker, harder to move through. The weather was unpredictable and hostile. Rain, snow, wind, heat, all of it working against them, and the humans used all of it. Rainstorms grounded Corvani aircraft. Moisture interfered with sensors. Fog hid human movements, made thermal imaging useless. Heat waves degraded equipment. Overloaded cooling systems. Cold froze lubricants. Made weapons jam. The planet itself seemed to fight against them. Every natural feature became a weapon. Every weather pattern became an ally of the humans. And through it all, the humans kept coming. Kept attacking. Kept dying by the thousands but taking Corvani with them. Making every death count. Making every sacrifice matter. Thrakis requested chemical weapons. Nerve agents. Poison gas. Biological weapons. Engineered viruses. Anything to break the resistance. Anything to stop the bleeding. Anything to win quickly before the cost became unbearable. Zethros approved the request. He had no choice. The campaign was failing. Casualties were mounting. Resources were depleting. The High Command's message was clear. Win quickly or withdraw. Chemical weapons were deployed across 3 continents. Nerve gas released over population centers. Biological agents dispersed in water supplies. Viruses designed to kill within hours released into the atmosphere. The Corvani expected mass casualties. Expected the resistance to collapse. Expected surrender within days. But the humans had been preparing for this too. Gas masks appeared. Full-body suits. Sealed shelters. Underground bunkers with air filtration. Decontamination protocols. Medical treatments reverse-engineered from captured Corvani databases. For every Corvani advantage, the humans had an answer. Not a perfect answer, not a complete answer, but enough to keep fighting. Enough to survive. Enough to resist. Then the humans revealed their most dangerous capability. They had been studying captured Corvani technology for weeks, working around the clock, thousands of scientists collaborating across the globe, sharing data, pooling knowledge, working without rest or sleep. They did not understand the theory completely, could not grasp all the physics, but they learned how to copy it, how to adapt it, how to weaponize it. The first retrofitted missile struck a Corvani carrier in high orbit. It should have been intercepted, shot down, destroyed, but it had a stolen shield generator attached, crude, unstable, overheating, but functional enough. Long enough, the carrier was destroyed, torn apart. 4,000 Corvani soldiers died in the explosion, vaporized, gone. It was the largest single loss in the entire campaign, the worst disaster in a war full of disasters. More attacks followed. Humans learned quickly, adapted quickly, improvised constantly. Every captured piece of technology was studied, dissected, understood enough to use. Every destroyed Corvani ship was scavenged, picked clean, stripped of anything useful. What they could not understand, they copied. What they could not copy, they destroyed. What they could not destroy, they avoided. Simple, brutal, effective. The casualty count climbed exponentially. 700 Corvani ships damaged or destroyed. 80,000 soldiers dead or missing. The invasion was 5 weeks old. By Corvani projections, Earth should have surrendered in 3 days, should have been pacified in 1 week, should have been colonized within a month. Instead, it was a meat grinder, a death trap, a disaster that grew worse with every passing day. Zethros sent another message to High Command. A report, an admission of failure. He requested reinforcements, more ships, more soldiers, more resources. Admitted that the campaign was not proceeding as planned, was failing, was costing far too much. The response took 3 weeks. Light speed was slow across interstellar distances. The message was brief. Just 3 sentences that sealed Earth's fate and the fleet's doom. Win immediately or withdraw. The Empire will not commit additional resources to one planet. Success or retreat are your only options. But winning immediately was impossible. Every victory was temporary. Every position was contested. The humans would not defend fixed locations, would not hold ground for pride. They would attack, retreat, and attack again. Hit and run, guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics perfected over thousands of years of human conflict. They used tactics from countless wars, ambushes from ancient times, traps from medieval warfare, psychological operations from modern conflicts, propaganda, terror, deception. They turned war into an art form, into science, into religion. The Corvani began to feel something they had never experienced before. Real fear, not tactical concern, not strategic worry, but primal terror. They were dying on an alien world far from home, fighting an enemy that should have been weak but was not. An enemy that welcomed death if it meant killing one more invader. On Earth, the cost was terrible beyond measure. Entire cities lay in ruins, reduced to rubble, to ash, to memories. Millions were dead, tens of millions, hundreds of millions displaced, homeless, refugees in their own world. But the humans kept fighting. Every loss became fuel for resistance. Every death became a reason to fight harder. The Corvani had expected fear to break them. Instead, fear made them more dangerous, more determined, more willing to sacrifice everything. Then came the turning point that changed everything. A human special forces team captured an intact Corvani destroyer. It was damaged but repairable, stranded in low orbit with a dead crew. Human engineers studied it for 3 days, learned its systems, understood enough to operate it. Human pilots trained on simulators built from the ship's computer, practiced in secret. Within 1 week, they had it operational, functional, armed. The first human-operated alien warship entered the battle. It was crude. The humans barely understood the controls, could not read half the displays, could not speak the language. But they understood enough. Understood weapons, understood shields, understood propulsion. They used the destroyer to attack other Corvani ships. The confusion was devastating. The Corvani hesitated, tried to identify friend from foe, ran recognition protocols, checked identification codes. The humans did not hesitate, just attacked, just killed, just moved forward. 2 more destroyers were captured, then a frigate, then a light cruiser. The humans learned faster than should have been possible, faster than any species in Corvani history. They improvised solutions to impossible problems, created workarounds for systems they did not fully understand, ignored safety protocols in favor of effectiveness, were willing to risk deaths for results. They were reckless, dangerous, unpredictable. Everything the Corvani were not. 6 weeks into the invasion, humanity launched Operation Last Stand. The name was chosen carefully, deliberately. The humans knew what it meant, understood the symbolism. This was their final coordinated offensive, the last organized strike. After this, they would have nothing left in reserve. No secret weapons, no hidden armies, just the will to fight and die. But that had always been enough. That had always been the weapon that mattered most. Every nation contributed everything remaining. Every military force prepared for final battle. Every soldier volunteered. Every pilot stepped forward. Scientists finished their last modifications to captured alien technology. Engineers readied every weapon that could still fire. Soldiers said goodbye to families they would never see again. Wrote final letters. Made peace with death. The plan was brutally simple. Launch everything at once. Every nuclear weapon. Every missile. Every captured alien device. Every satellite. Every ship. Every fighter. Every bomb. Hit the Corvani fleet with such overwhelming force that their defenses would collapse. Not elegant. Not sophisticated. Not clever. Just brutal mathematics. Raw numbers. Overwhelming power concentrated in one terrible moment. Zethros detected the preparations. His sensors showed the massive buildup. Energy signatures. Heat blooms. Electromagnetic activity. He knew what was coming, could see it building like a storm on the horizon. He ordered his fleet to prepare. Maximum shields. All point defense systems online. All weapons charged. All ships ready to intercept. He had survived attacks before. Had repelled assaults. This would be no different. He was wrong. The attack began at dawn. Simultaneous. Coordinated. Perfect timing across the entire planet. Thousands of launches occurred at the same moment. Missiles rose from hidden silos, from underground bunkers, from mobile launchers. Ships lifted from damaged spaceports, from makeshift platforms, from converted civilian facilities. Satellites adjusted orbits for collision courses, committed to their final missions. The sky filled with fire and death, with trails of smoke, with the roar of thousands of engines, with the light of 1,000 suns rising. The Corvani point defense systems engaged. Energy beams lanced out. Interceptor drones launched. Counter missiles fired. The first wave of missiles was destroyed, vaporized, shattered. Then the second wave. Then the third. The defenses were working. The attack was being contained, was being stopped, but the waves kept coming. Like an ocean. Like a flood. Like a force of nature that could not be stopped. The humans had not sent hundreds of missiles. Not thousands. They had sent everything. Every weapon. Every warhead. Every explosive device on the planet. Tens of thousands of warheads, more than any defense system was designed to handle. More than any fleet could stop. More than anyone thought possible. The Corvani computers tried to prioritize targets, made calculations, ran algorithms, tried to create an optimal response. The humans did not care about optimal, did not care about efficiency, did not care about tactics. They cared about overwhelming force, about saturation, about raw, unstoppable power. And they succeeded. Nuclear explosions blossomed across orbital space, white-hot, blinding, beautiful in their terrible way. Not precision strikes, not surgical attacks, just raw destructive power on a scale the galaxy had not seen in centuries. Thermonuclear fire, fusion reactions. The same power that lit stars unleashed as weapons. The Corvani shields held against the first impacts, absorbed the energy, dispersed the heat. Then they began to fail, to crack, to shatter, to die. Ship after ship exploded, broke apart, burned, some from direct hits, nuclear fire consuming them, some from cascading failures, systems overloading, some from debris impacts, shrapnel traveling at orbital speeds. The perfect formation shattered. The coordinated defense collapsed. The fleet that had conquered 63 worlds broke under the assault of one primitive planet. One stubborn species. One absolute refusal to surrender. Zethros watched his armada disintegrate. Watched decades of planning die. Watched the Empire's pride burn. The tactical display showed only chaos. Red indicators everywhere. Ships offline. Crews dead. Systems failing. In 8 hours, he lost more vessels than in his entire career. 3,200 ships destroyed, erased, gone by one planet. By one species that should have been weak. The humans were not weak. They were terrifying. Zethros gave the order he never thought he would give. The order that would end his career and his honor. The order that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Retreat. The surviving Corvani ships broke orbit, fled Earth's gravity well, jumped to hyperspace as soon as they cleared the interference. They left behind their dead, their wounded, their equipment, their pride. The journey home took 7 months. 7 months for Zethros to count the cost, to write the reports, to prepare for the consequences. Of 9,700 ships that had left Corvani space, only 17 returned. 17. The rest were destroyed, captured, or left stranded in a solar system that had become a graveyard for Corvani ambition. When the fleet arrived home, Zethros was arrested immediately, stripped of rank, brought before the High Command, charged with incompetence, with cowardice, with failure, but the charges were eventually dropped. Because the High Command reviewed all the data, watched all the recordings, read all the reports, and they understood this was not Zethros' failure. This was not tactical incompetence. This was something the Corvani had never encountered before, a species that would rather die than surrender. That valued freedom more than survival. That would destroy themselves if it meant taking their enemies with them. The news spread across the galaxy quickly, faster than light communication carried the story to every civilization, every species, every world. The Corvani Empire, the greatest military power in the known galaxy, had sent 9,700 warships to conquer one primitive planet. Only 17 returned. The humans had won, not through superior technology, not through better tactics, but through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Other empires took note. Other species reconsidered their expansion plans. The galaxy became more cautious, more respectful of the small blue planet in the unremarkable yellow star system. Earth sent its own message to the stars. Brief, direct, clear. We are humanity. We are not easy prey. We will defend our home. Come in peace or do not come at all. The message was received, understood, remembered. And for the first time in galactic history, other species began to fear humans. Not because of their weapons, not because of their technology, but because of something far more dangerous, their absolute refusal to give up, their willingness to pay any price for freedom, their capacity for violence when threatened. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, not as victims, not as primitives, but as warriors who would defend their home no matter the cost. The Corvani never returned to Earth. Neither did any other empire. The small blue planet was left alone, given space, given respect because the galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. A lesson written in the wreckage of 9,683 warships. Never underestimate humanity. Never threaten their home. And never ever assume that technology alone determines the victor. Sometimes the will to fight matters more than the weapons you carry. Sometimes, courage is the greatest weapon of all.